All righty, everybody, welcome to episode 6 of No One Asked Us. And super excited this week to have Diego Sanchez, president of Housing Wire, with us. And while probably almost everybody who is watching knows Diego. We did have GPT, as always, write a quick bio on Diego based on a few LinkedIn pages. So we'll jump right into it. Diego Sanchez is the president of Housing Wire Media, where he orchestrates the symphony of sales, editorial, technology, events, and subscriptions. With a career spanning 2 decades in digital media, Diego has held senior leadership roles at Travelzoo, Rodale, and Adtelligent. A Harvard alum with an MBA from Columbia, Diego combines Ivy League intellect with street smart savvy. He was named Digital Executive of the Year by Folio in 2020, proving that he doesn't just ride the digital wave, he helped shape it. Well, when he's not steering the ship at Housing Wire Media, Diego enjoys life in Brooklyn with his wife and 2 sons, possibly plotting how to turn bedtime stories into engaging content stories. Welcome, Diego, and thank you.
That was fun. I
Did
enjoyed
you
that.
did you do a good job?
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad. All right, excellent. Well, Diego, where I really want to jump in right out of the gate is, how did you end up in the housing industry? Because obviously you really come from a digital media background, and now you find yourself as one of the leading voices when it comes to the housing industry.
It's a testament to the power of LinkedIn and staying connected with folks. So, Clayton Collins, the CEO of Housing Wire, and myself were introduced by a mutual friend who I had gotten to know and who was in the business of media and was a fellow business development executive like myself in B2C media. And Clayton made the amazing decision as somebody who had no media experience back in 2016 to buy a business media company. So he had a pretty significant experience in banking, and his dad is a mortgage broker, but no experience in media. And so when he acquired Housing Wire, or when he led a group of investors to acquire Housing Wire back in 2016, he was really looking for a partner who had media operating experience to complement his corporate finance, corporate strategy experience. And so we were introduced back then. It wasn't a good fit at the time, but Clayton and I just stayed in touch. And we talked pretty regularly on the phone. We saw each other at media industry events. And then, as we kept talking, it started to make more and more sense for me to partner with him and bring that media operations experience that could complement his background in corporate finance and corporate strategy. So yeah, like power of staying connected, power of LinkedIn, power of keeping in touch with important people in your network.
So you had to come up to speed really quickly. I mean, I think for a lot of people who listen to you speak or read your content on LinkedIn, really would assume that you're a housing guru that has been in the space for decades. I mean, what was that like, having to really be thrust into, I assume, an industry that you didn't really know much about at all?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I'm somebody who is a lifelong learner who loves to learn about new industries and new things in general. And so it was, I brought a pretty significant amount of media industry experience, but to your point, knew almost nothing about housing industry. I bought my own home,
Right.
and so I knew about it from like the consumer perspective. But in terms of like the industry and the way it works, and housing is complicated. There are several different verticals with mortgage and real estate and title and valuation. And even for people that are in the industry, if you're in mortgage, the title process can be a little bit mysterious. The valuation process can be a little bit mysterious. And so even within the industry, the other verticals can be a little bit of a foreign concept. And so, yeah, no, I loved jumping right in. And when I joined in 2018, I feel like the housing industry has been incredibly active and chaotic, really, for the entire 7 years that I've been in it. And so, I feel like a lot of people in the industry, even if you've been in it for decades, starting in that 2018 time period, like you were needing to be a lifelong learner as well and learn a ton about disruption and digitization. I'm sure we'll talk about artificial intelligence. There's just been so much that's been happening that I feel like I'm learning alongside a lot of other people who maybe have been in the industry for a while. But I just love to learn.
Well, and it's so interesting, and I applaud everybody, at Housing Wire, right? Because when you think about it, you guys have to know every single piece of the puzzle, right? Like for instance, myself, like I know capital markets, I know tech, right? Mace knows tech, knows front end originations. PK tech, really more the sort of wholesale correspondent. But you guys really need to understand what it's like life for a real estate agent, a broker, a wholesale, a retail, title, valuation. I mean, there's so much that goes into it that it's really impressive that you guys handle the breadth of information.
Yeah, it's really nice to have all the experts that we have at Housing Wire. So, there are folks in our newsroom who specialize in real estate stories, other folks specialize in mortgage, others in title. And so, they build up those reps writing about and covering those specific verticals in housing. And so we start to lean on them as the experts in our organization. And so I can always ask them a question and learn from those folks. You look at our analysts like Logan Mohtashami, who's been covering housing market data for a really long time. And he's an expert at it. And so It's really nice being in my position. I can tap into these different experts across the organization who have been, covering their beat in many cases for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so like, I don't have to be an expert in all the topics because I know experts in all these topics and can talk to them regularly.
Right. Which makes total sense. So shifting from there, can we talk a little bit about Housing Wire talks about tech. You guys talk about the mortgage, but you also have a lot of tech that you guys are using within the company itself, right? I mean, I know we all think of Housing Wire, but you also have obviously Altos Research, Real Trends. Maybe talk just a little bit about like what tech you guys use within the operation from kind of a day-to-day perspective.
Sure. Yeah. So we, like you said, we're not just Housing Wire. We acquired Altos Research almost exactly 2 years ago. And so that brought in to the company, a lot of proprietary data. Really we have data, housing market data on every zip code in the country. And that data is refreshed at least weekly. And so that whole platform has been built on, the Amazon cloud. And so when we acquired Altos, really for the first time, we started building a pretty substantial product development and engineering team in-house. Before that acquisition, we had always worked with third-party agencies and vendors to help build stuff for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really loved that shift from, working with third parties to really primarily doing most of our product development and engineering in-house. And it's, across the whole ecosystem from, our front-end websites, to the databases that we use and to capture and store and analyze the data for Altos and some of our other data sets. And so like, I think that's been the really big thing that's happened from a tech perspective, is really insourcing a lot of what we do from a product development engineering perspective. When I joined back in 2018, we had been operating on kind of a legacy proprietary third-party content management system that really wasn't able to innovate as quickly as we wanted to innovate within the HousingWire business. And so pretty soon after I joined, we made the decision to move to WordPress. And so that has really opened up a lot of opportunity for us, with the whole plugin ecosystem that WordPress has. And really, I think it's like 45 or 50% of media companies and publishers operate on the WordPress content management system. And so that has really enabled us to innovate much, much more quickly. We send a lot of email. So our email platform is HubSpot. And that gives us a lot of flexibility and power to, develop new templates and segment our lists and send the right emails to the right folks at the right time. And so, those are kind of like the major building blocks of what we do. And then, we do a lot of subscription work and accept payments through Stripe. So that's another major fundamental backbone of our tech platform.
Yeah, and it is insane because you guys have, how many subscribers does HousingWire have now?
So HousingWire is around 15,000 plus.
Right.
If you look at our individual and our enterprise subscribers, and so that's the HousingWire subscription. And then we have another several thousand who subscribe to the Altos SaaS platform. Most of those folks are real estate agents and loan originators who are using Altos to become experts in their local housing market.
And then you obviously have a ridiculous amount of traffic just coming through the website itself. And if I remember, the count is you guys have written over 75,000 articles. Since the inception.
Andrew, you'd probably know best. As you know, you and I are working together on a pretty interesting technology innovation that sits on top of your Ask Bob AI platform.
Yes.
I think we're going to call it Ask HousingWire. So we're not.
It will not be. Just so everybody knows, it will not be called Ask Bob. But we do have some really cool things that we are working on. Yeah. The first one will be coming here in the near future. But housing, we're giddy because we love data. We also love very clean data, and I will tell you right now, HousingWire has it together. The easiest data integration ever from that.
So we've written a ton of articles. We get anywhere from 750,000 to 1 million unique visitors on a monthly basis to our various websites. The bulk of that goes to housingwire.com, but we also have altosresearch.com and we have realtrends.com. That get a significant amount of traffic as well. And then we've got, close to 200,000 newsletter subscribers. So folks who are reading the HousingWire Daily Update or Lending Life or Real Estate Daily and kind of tuning into us that way. We get well over 1 million podcast downloads every year. And that's for the HousingWire Daily podcast that's hosted by Sarah Wheeler, our editor-in-chief. I host a podcast called Powerhouse, and Tracy Velt, our senior director of data and content, and somebody who's been covering real estate for decades, has her Real Trending podcast. So we're really, we're trying to publish into all these channels, wherever our audience, wants to ingest our content. We're trying to play in those channels.
Right.
I'm gonna throw Ask Howie into the bucket of names. Howie.
Ask Howie. I like
what
that.
What is one of your highest viewed kind of articles that you didn't expect?
That I didn't expect. It was actually the most trafficked article of last year was an article about non-QM products, and usually the articles that pop for us are anything to do with housing market data, mortgage rates, basically like what the hell is going on in the market.
Wow. So did the ICE coverage give you a lot of traffic?
What's that?
Did the ICE SDK get you?
Absolutely, that was definitely a big one. But this one article on on non-QM products, I guess it makes sense because if you think about rates being higher for longer than anyone would like, non-QM makes more and more sense as rates stay high. But this one just blew up.
It doesn't really surprise me. So it was interesting. Last week I was at NBA Secondary when we were doing the show, and I was talking about the fact that there were faces I've never seen at Secondary before. And these were a lot of shops who were traditionally agency only shops who, to your point, Diego, it's like rates are elevated at some point in time. It's like, okay, we got to go play in a different space. So there's a certain level of me that I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because there's a lot of people kind of moving towards the non-QM.
Yeah, I loved it because, it gave me a new line of questioning, for the podcast that I do. I started asking most of the mortgage executives that come on Powerhouse, about non-QM, like if they're really going to be there for the full customer life cycle, and the full rate cycle, right? Like non-QM is important.
100%.
Diego, I don't think you covered this when you were outlining the lines of different businesses, but events is a relatively newer, I guess, like line of business for you guys, right?
Yeah, and it's it has very, very quickly grown to become our second biggest business at HousingWire, which has really been an incredible journey for me. We started doing events, pretty small events, right before the pandemic hit, and so our launch into events couldn't have happened at a worse time, right? Like basically events got shut down for a year-ish. Yeah. And so any momentum that we gained from the launch of the business was, kind of destroyed. But it's been really interesting as we've come back from COVID, it does seem like this is how people want to develop business and form partnerships and recruit and do all the things that, were happening by phone, during COVID. They want to be in person. Like no more. I mean, people will still tune into webinars and other virtual events, but if they can, they really want to be doing stuff in person. And so we, our event business really took off last year when we merged two separate events. So we had an event called HousingWire Annual that was for mortgage executives. And then we had an event called The Gathering of Eagles, which was for real estate executives. And last year, we decided this is all better together. Like HousingWire loves to cover the whole industry. And we think we're actually really good at covering the intersection of real estate and mortgage and title and appraisal and valuation. Why not bring those executives together as well? And that was a really good bet. We were worried about it, but it ended up being a really, really good bet. And that, The Gathering was the brand name for the merged event. And The Gathering 2024 was awesome. And it was so good and there were such interesting themes at The Gathering 2024 that we ended up launching this one-day summit concept. So the first one was focused on AI, actually, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit. And the reason that we launched this is AI, it was only in the headline for 1 or 2 sessions at the Gathering 2024, but it ended up covering coming up in like a third of the sessions at the Gathering 2024. And so we thought, okay, we gotta create a 1-day summit around this topic. And then we did IMB Summit later in 2024, and then we launched another 1-day summit earlier this year called the Housing Economics Summit. And so like all of a sudden, we've got 3 1-day summits that we're doing every year. We've got the Gathering, and it's a really significant part of our business.
Yeah, and I will say I went to the AI Summit last year, and it was phenomenal because it's very well stacked, right? It's like content, like, and you walk away gaining. I probably gained more knowledge in the 1-day AI Summit than I do generally speaking at like 3-day conferences, because it was just stacked so well, and the attendee list was extremely impressive.
Yeah, I love to hear that. That was really the intent. It's like, we're all busy, and it's great to go to these conferences that are 2, 3, 4 days. But many of us have kids or other family obligations or other life obligations.
Yep.
And it can be really difficult to get away for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these multiple day conferences. And so if we stay really focused on one topic, can we really cover a lot of ground and really still offer the networking, have the C-suite attendees, and other executives there, so that the networking is still really good, but really stay focused for a day on one topic. And it's worked out, particularly with the AI Summit. That was a very successful summit.
I am obviously I'm very excited about the Gathering, and seeing how this, because I like, at least conceptually, because I didn't get a chance to go last year, is to see the networking component. Like I really love the like pickleball tournament and things of that nature, which really kind of shake it up a little bit and really give you an opportunity to network with people you might not network with at a a normal sort of traditional conference. So it's really kind of impressive.
It's just an awesome part of that event. Now it is a multiple day event, and so people are trusting us with multiple days out of their typical schedule, and we really try to create and facilitate those networking and business development opportunities. So the way the Gathering is structured is it's a half day of content and a half day of networking and activities. And particularly because we're bringing real estate and mortgage together, and there are not that many other events that do that at the scale that we do and at the executive level that we do. And so last year, at the beginning of the Gathering 2024, it was funny to watch, like the mortgage executives and the real estate executives didn't really know what to do with each other on that first day. And so they were kind of like circling each other and trying to figure out how to interact. And, but then by the third day, they're like creating content together, at the bar together, and doing deals and doing partnerships together. We definitely want to have a lot of networking at the Gathering because, again, people are taking time out, and these are some pretty high level folks.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So Liz, I do want to ask one quick question is on the AI front within HousingWire, and then let's move on to sort of the general landscape. But are there ways that internally you all are using AI? Obviously, the articles are still written by people, right? And that's needed. But are there other ways that you guys are just using like a Claude or a ChatGPT, like internally within the organization? Is that something that you and Clayton promote and push? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, it's really important, and actually, it's been interesting. So every 3 months, Clayton and I meet with our board of directors, and the last 3 meetings, they have been very interested in the projects that we were thinking about and launching related to artificial intelligence at HousingWire. So we're definitely getting pushed But we're also just really excited about the potential for AI to help in several different areas of the business. Some of the ways that it's helping already is, we publish a lot of content, written, audio, video, and so it's already a co-pilot for a lot of the content creators internally, helping them ideate, outline the content that they're going to create and publish. And the interesting thing about that is, I think we've really had to destigmatize AI a little bit. I think a lot of content creators have looked at it as kind of like it's like cheating to use AI in the creation of content. And we really don't see it that way. Now, we don't want the finished product to be written by AI.
Right. Yeah.
But
Obviously.
in terms of outlining and ideating, there's almost nothing better than having this companion to help you with that. So, there's really been a process of destigmatizing that. And then on the data side, we collect so much data and analyze it and publish it on at least a weekly basis. And so, error checking and making sure that the data makes sense. AI can be a very useful companion in that process. And so, as an example, every year through our Real Trends business, we rank the top brokerages, team leaders, and agents in the country. And AI can be very useful in flagging outliers. If there's somebody who did 0 transactions last year and suddenly has, 50, 60, or 100 transactions in 2024, that might be something that we, our fact checkers and our data checkers want to take a closer look at. And so
Right.
if you think about it, like, we're getting tens of thousands of data submissions for rankings. It's tough to go through each one with a fine-tooth comb, and AI can just be helpful in flagging the ones that maybe need a closer look.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great use case for it right there. I do know Chris is sadly going to have to leave us here in a minute. Chris, do you have any questions before you?
I am just excited to hear Diego answer John's question.
Well, you're gonna have to wait for that till the end.
I'm gonna ask, what's something that behind the scenes in all these events that most people wouldn't know?
What's something going on behind the scenes?
Yeah.
I mean, events are, when you attend an event and it's a good event, it just seems like it's effortless. But it is anything but, right? Like we take our events very seriously, and our event team, we have a dynamic duo of Brennan Nath and McKenna Clay, who take the lead on the logistics for all of our events and creating the agenda, doing a lot of the promotions or to sell tickets. It is a massive, massive behind the scenes effort to pull off what appears to be a flawless event. So it takes a lot of work.
So what is Diego's stress level like? When you're at the event, is it kind of like I'm here and I get to relax, or are you still stressing the whole time?
At the event, it's low because, to your point, well, first of all, I know I have a really good team who works on the event and is thinking about all the logistics. I know the time that I put into making sure the right people are in the room. So I do a lot of outreach myself to make sure it's the right audience at each event. So once I get to the event, I'm creating content. I record a lot of interviews on site. I moderate panels and do fireside chats on stage. And then I'm just enjoying myself at all the social activities and parties that we do. Yeah. So my stress level, I've moved much more. I'm still stressed right now, and the gathering is 2 weeks away. But in about a week and a half, that stress is going to disappear because I'll have done all that I can to make sure that the room is great and has the right people in it, and then I'm just going to enjoy myself.
which is crazy because it's over 800 people now, right? 800 tickets.
Yeah, so we'll be close to 900, if not above 900 by the time we get to Colorado Springs. We're at about 815, 820 right now. And we typically see, 60, 70, 80 more tickets purchased in these last 2 weeks.
Right. Okay.
So, it's last year we were about 700. And so it'll be pretty good growth over last year. But we've managed to maintain the executive level. So 60% of the people that will be at the gathering are C-suite executives. And then another 20% are at the director, VP, SVP level.
Okay.
So it's like pretty much the whole event is senior leadership from whatever company that they're representing.
So, all right. So let's shift out to the general landscape, and we'll see where this conversation takes us. But you're close to so much of this, or a lot of your people, maybe is a better way to put it. But literally breaking news right before we got on, Jamie had posted out to LinkedIn that Encino just laid off 130 people today, citing that they needed to get more focused, removed, I think, duplicativity, and I forget exactly what were the other things that they have said. But what are you sort of, are there other things that you're sort of hearing in terms of, what's going on within, particularly some of these larger tech companies, right?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of startups, right now, particularly, I mean, PK has a startup, I have a startup. So that doesn't really affect us, right? From that perspective, but these very large organizations like an Encino, in the current rate environment, it's probably not going great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key is this rate cycle and these higher rates, as we all know, have just been going on for a really long time, right? And the housing market this year seemed like it was maybe perking up a little bit, but then we had Liberation Day and rates have stayed really high. And it seems like, although maybe we're doing a little bit better than last year was a really low bar. And when all is said and done for 2025, it might not end up being that much better than 2024. And so you look at that kind of housing market, that kind of rate environment. Now, on the one hand, the mortgage companies and the real estate companies that have made it through the last couple of years will probably be able to keep going, right? Only the strongest have survived the last couple of years.
Right.
But the way that they have survived in a lot of cases is they're really, when contracts come up with technology providers, they are negotiating really, really hard. And they're not necessarily looking at a lot of new technology right now because they don't want the increased cost burden. And so I think that's what you're seeing with Encino and some of the other technology companies that have gone through layoffs. It seems like a lot of these companies are just needing to position themselves for rates to stay higher for, maybe another year or so, maybe even longer. And so it's prudent to cut 7, 10, 15, 20% of the team and focus in on the areas of the business that are the most successful right now. So it doesn't surprise me at all. The area that Encino operates in terms of mortgage is extremely competitive with startups, with mid-sized companies, with behemoths that control significant market share. And so it doesn't surprise me that there are some struggles.
Well, and interestingly enough, I met with someone at Secondary and I was talking to them. They're a new entrant. a very seasoned, experienced group, but they're starting a new originator. And I was just talking with him through like what his tech stack looked like. So, just curious, if you're starting from scratch on day one, like what exactly does that look like? And the thing that like jumped at me that I thought was interesting was they built their own POS.
Yeah.
So
And-
they just bypassed everybody in the market on that one.
And that's happening with smaller startup entrants. There are several larger lenders who are building their own POS. It's really interesting. A couple weeks ago, I joined a summit of top originators from across the country. There were probably 50, like this is like top 0.1% originators.
Right.
And, at some point in the discussion, we started talking about the application process, and nobody in the room took online applications.
Oh, that's interesting.
Period.
Oh, interesting.
So they all said, no way am I going to send people a link. That is a really easy way to lose a potential customer.
Fascinating.
So all applications are either taken in person or over the phone. Now, the internal team, when they're taking the application over the phone, is using some platform to enter all the data.
Right.
But if you think about all the money that has been invested in POS over the past 5 years, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars.
Right. Yeah.
That level of investment, maybe there was overinvestment in the space. If top originators are not sending links out for applications, that I think that says quite a bit.
It says so. This, by the way, that's going to be the most insightful nugget that I think comes through. And it's interesting because Fabi and I were going back and forth on a LinkedIn post, I think last week, and he had just said like, "What jobs do you think will remain?" And I had said, business development. And I said, I tell my kids the two most important skills that you can learn are networking and storytelling, because I think
absolutely
that human component is going to be, sorry. Mike Cush just made a comment that was pretty funny. We'll post it here in a second. That human component is going to be so important. And so like one of the things we like to talk about when we talk about AI, for instance, is I always love to ask the question is what keeps you from doing your job? Right. So like, what's the most important thing? We'll just go ahead and throw Mike's comment up there. But what's the most important part of your job? Right. And I'm not an LO. I'm not going to say that I know anything about life as an LO, right? But like, to me, it's about, I would think that role is all about human interaction.
Yeah, 100%. So the way that the vast majority, 95% plus of this room spent their time was in realtor education. So they all think of their primary customer as being the real estate agent. Right. So they want to make sure that, all the real estate agents in their sphere are well educated in all the products that they can help with. They want to make sure that those realtors are educated on the local housing market. And so you're absolutely right. When they weren't when they or their team weren't on the phone with borrowers or in person with borrowers, they were out educating and partnering with real estate agents, all about face-to-face networking and networking over the phone.
There you go, folks. Tech doesn't solve everything.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, sales will be hard to replace by AI. Like a good salesperson can really be enabled pretty significantly by AI. But it does come down to, can you build relationships? Can you close on relationships? and that's tough for AI to do.
And I don't think that'll ever go away. We had an episode a few weeks ago where it was really interesting. I forget exactly what we were talking about, but it was interesting because, like, me being the Gen Xer, I was like, oh yeah,
tickets.
no people. What was it?
Support tickets.
Oh, support tickets. That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, I love my Instacart, right? Like, I love my DoorDash. Like, it's very easy. I don't have to talk to anybody. But then we got to PK, and PK was like, oh no, I want the person. And I thought it was so interesting are we now seeing sort of almost a rejection of this sort of digital lifestyle, which then AI takes over the things we don't want to do as humans, right? But does it actually end up, everybody's so worried about the human experience, right? But does it end up actually elevating and improving the human experiences as a result?
I think there's a chance that it could. And if you look at, again, going back to this room of top originators, they were all using AI for the tasks that, like you said, that they didn't want to do, or it didn't make sense from a like time value of money perspective for them to do, right? That their best use was out there networking with people and being a salesperson, and the logistics were better left to artificial intelligence. So that it could be interesting. There definitely could be, more time for the people who enjoy it, more time to do to do that networking and that in-person sales.
So real quick, I'm going to jump away from tech for 1/2 second because Mike, who is here every week, thank you, Mike. Will you ever delve into consumer facing, whether it is in news or events?
I would never say never to that. But it would be, I would be very surprised if we dipped into consumer. Now, that's like pure B2C, like first time home buyers, looking for information about buying a house, or like kind of real estate porn type stuff, big mansions or celebrity homes.
Right. Right.
I don't see that as being helpful to our audience of housing professionals, and that's who we focus on. However, there's some prosumer opportunity and possibilities. If you think about like the fix and flip folks, the DIY landlords, a lot of those folks are actually, real estate agents or loan originators or otherwise occupied in the housing industry. And so I could see us writing more on those topics. But that's sort of a prosumer angle, not really a consumer housing angle.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It would be kind of cool to do sort of, in the vein of Ask Housing Wire, is some sort of an engine that's just the Q&A for the first time home buyer, right? Yeah. Who like has like questions of like, how do I do this? How do I do that? That would be.
There's also like B2B2C, right? So like I could see us covering some of those topics in order to arm the housing professionals in our audience with really great content that they could then share with their sphere. That could be interesting.
Great idea.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've thought about. I really wouldn't see us doing like a consumer-oriented housing event. That just wouldn't. I don't think we would ever do anything like that.
I wonder what that would even look like.
I don't know.
Diego,
you just, if you want to mess with Brenna and McKenna, just tell them that like that. Oh, hey, by the way, we have
our next move
for a new event. We're gonna need you guys to figure this out.
Diego, I got a quick question. So one of the things you said was that going back like a couple minutes, the work product itself, in terms of like an article or something like that, isn't written by AI. While your editors might use it to maybe fact check or just kind of double check or proofread, maybe come up with a sentence or two, refine language, things like
Yep.
that. Let's say we fast forward like 10 years. Why is it, why not have like, let's say like the Encino thing happens. Some AI agent picks up on that piece of information, reaches out to Encino for comment, maybe reaches out to potential employees that might have been laid off, writes a piece of article, and then the editor just has to review it and just, do you see that happening in the future or no?
Yeah. And we actually, I do see that happening. Whether it will ever be faster than a reporter who knows the exact right people to call, knows the exact right questions to ask, and is a real person, right? Like, and maybe sometimes people would be more interested in
talking to people,
sharing details with a real person. But we actually did experiment with AI writing up press releases, and then they were edited by one of our editors, and it just turned out that it was slower, and it wasn't like the content, the quality just wasn't there. Now, I think you're right. Maybe in 10 years it will be, but I still think that there's room for a journalist who has developed sources and developed those relationships, getting back to the relationship formation and curation that we've talked about throughout this conversation. Yeah, it's hard for AI to replace that relationship component.
Yeah,
to the point where AI might get somebody to reveal something that would be a scoop, for example. I don't really see that happening.
So maybe the other parts, but the human interaction itself.
Yeah. So maybe like, and you could see it coming together. Like AI takes the first crack, right? A reporter is assigned to go out and get comments from their, from the network of sources that we've developed inside that company and outside the company, to comment on it. And then the story that AI has written, plus the quotes that the reporter went out and gotten, is submitted to the editor, who then kind of pulls it all together. But one of the issues that we found is it was just a lot of fact checking and like not knowing. We didn't know what we didn't know, like in terms of what the AI could have been hallucinating on. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it felt very uncomfortable publishing. It felt uncomfortable. I know the editors just felt uncomfortable editing these stories, because it's like, oh man, like what facts in here might just be total garbage, right?
Right. That's where the real issue is. What would be interesting is you could actually take and fine tune a model on like every article that Sarah ever wrote, right? And then have an engine that can write like Sarah, or not like James though, because we don't want to get rid of it.
Or what you do, or I mean, hypothetically, you could have like the AI just go from 0 to 1 on generating a bunch of content, like when things like that break, and then like James could go in there and reach out to his network of people and his sources and start filling it in, and then you guys can clean it up and post.
I mean, I could see that scenario, and one of the things that that the search engines reward you on, is speed to publishing when a story is breaking, right? So typically the first person to publish gets some juice from that.
Interesting.
Now, if you take that to the extreme and you just try to be super fast and you're sloppy, you'll get punished over time. But the person who's correct and first does tend to get some juice.
Well,
do you guys? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's interesting because again, it comes back to the human in the loop, right? Component. It comes back to relationships, because is somebody more likely to pick up the phone when James or Sarah calls immediately, that's going to get you out to press much quicker.
Yeah, I was going to ask, in terms of like when you go on Google today and you search something, there's like that first piece, which is like the AI blurb, and then you kind of scroll down and see all the links. I've kind of followed some of the folks in like the SEO space, and for some people, they're doing certain things to make sure that whether it's ChatGPT or Google or maybe one of the other providers, they're like formatting and adding certain files within their website so that AI is able, or like when they scrape the data, they're able to pick up on some of this information. That way, HousingWire is a source that shows up at the top, or is a source that's picked up by GPT when you ask a question.
Yeah, that's going to be really important. And the protocols are just starting to be formed around, because there's been protocols for how the search bots crawl the site and how you should format your content to be most approachable by those crawlers.
Yeah.
The way that some of the LLMs crawl content is different. And so we are going to have to prepare ourselves and structure our content in some different ways to be more accessible to those. And we'll do that. I mean, it's important. I'm not worried about suddenly not getting any traffic because I plan on having HousingWire content in those snippets at the top and in the various chats that are out there for interacting with the different LLMs. But yeah, no, we're gonna have to do some refining over the next 6 to 12 months.
I think this also, though, is where that brand awareness as an industry subject matter expert becomes so critical, right? So, one of the things that we're working on with HousingWire is just how do we utilize the HousingWire data and allow for, one of the first things is how do we allow for a better experience, right, for the readers? I think for a lot of organizations moving in that direction to where now it's like, just like I don't go Google pretty much anything anymore, I go to ChatGPT, but like if I want something housing related, I just know like, oh, I'm just going to go to HousingWire. Right. And I think the format of the websites also will look a lot different.
I think you're right
from that perspective as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it's a little bit scary. I mean, I've been working in media for a really long time. And this does feel like we're heading down the road of a pretty significant shift in the way that people are going to be ingesting content going forward, really. Because to your point, Andrew, my 13-year-old son, I don't even know if he ever has gone to Google. He's just always he always asks ChatGPT about questions and then does his searching from there. So no, that'll be a pretty significant shift. But I think ultimately you're right that expertise and an analysis, good analysis will always be rewarded, especially in an industry like housing where it is so complicated and there is so much data that you need to unpack and analyze. I think there's a place for HousingWire in that future.
The problem still stands true, which is humans want information from trusted sources, whether it's the printing press hundreds of years ago.
And that'll become more of the case.
Yes.
I think with the onset of everything that's going on, like with VO3 and the amount of fake stuff that we're seeing, that's why I think that trusted source will become the more important component.
We just need to figure out what the economic model is, right? So like media companies have existed on advertising and subscriptions for a really long time. And so I can't really let the LLMs get behind our paywall and show that paywalled content within their ecosystems unless they're going to compensate me somehow, right? So we just have to figure out the new economic model And if they're not going to drive traffic to Housing Wire, how do we monetize on the advertising side? So there's things that are going to have to get worked out over the next couple of years. But I imagine we'll figure it out so that experts can continue to be the experts and people can continue to get access to expertise.
Yeah. So we've only got a few minutes left here. So we've got a few questions left, but we're gonna go right into John Levinik's question last week for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that real quick. John, what is your question for Diego Sanchez next week?
Our industry unquestionably is tied to public policy. The future of Freddie Mac coming out of conservatorship, examination, regulatory oversight. There's a correlation between politics and policy as it directly impacts our industry. And this is one of the things I admire him for. It's really hard to have personal ideology and professional needs. Diego, how do you process what's going on in the political environment as it relates to ideology, which has a direct impact on our industry?
so John came loaded for you. I apologize.
Yeah, he really he dropped the bomb right there, right? You can't avoid politics in housing. It is just filled to the brim with historical issues and political issues. There's NIMBY issues. There's regulatory issues, and we're talking about people's homes. It's not like any other asset where you can buy and sell it, a little bit impersonally. This is your home, and so I think politics are always going to be a part of the housing equation. I really try my best. And sometimes it's hard, and I'll admit that sometimes I'm not able to do this successfully, but I really try my best to let the data and the news speak for itself. I think that it's been a really interesting year so far, right? I think that I think a lot of folks maybe thought that rates would be a lot lower than they are right now. I think a lot of folks thought that, having a president who is a real estate guy could have been good for real estate and the housing market. And I think it's been pretty mixed. It's probably the best way that I can put it. And so just continuing to, grow a company that employs a lot of people who are interested in analyzing and publishing facts about what's going on in the housing market, and then letting people make the call for themselves on how it's going. And so I've been trying my best to editorialize as little as possible. But at the end of the day, politics and housing are completely intertwined. There's no way to separate them.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so we have one more question, and then you get to ask your question of Craig for last week. This is our ridiculous question from ChatGPT, which I just asked it to come up with a question, and this is what it gave me. Diego, if Housing Wire Media were a boy band, what would your role be? And more importantly, what would the title of your debut album be?
The title of the debut album?
This is the best one we've gotten so far.
That's pretty awesome. Wow. So I don't know if I could take the Justin Timberlake role. That's probably Clayton, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems more Clayton.
He's leading the charge. My goodness.
I bet you it's like a Ringo guy.
It's really funny. I've always had sort of a secret desire to be in a boy band. And so
There's still time left.
This is a really funny question in a number of ways. And I love karaoke. I like to dance. My voice is not that good, so that's probably why I'm not in a boy band. But the debut album, oh God, maybe I'll just borrow Logan's line for the 2022-2023 housing market. Savagely unhealthy.
That's actually a great song for an album, or a great title for an album.
Yeah.
All right. So our guest next week, Diego, is Craig Denton from Indie Mortgage. What question would you like to ask Craig?
Yeah, I'd love to know. Take us into the details of the platform that you're thinking about and you're building, and tangible use cases for mortgage lenders right now. So, like, one of the big themes we have at the AI Summit is no vaporware. Tell me about how you're going beyond vaporware and tangibly integrating with mortgage lenders.
Awesome. I love it. Great question, Diego. Well, Diego, thank you so much. I know you're super busy, especially given the gathering is just around the corner. So, all of us appreciate your time, and I will see you in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. This was great. Really, thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, thank you. All right.